I was sitting at the kitchen table when my wife came home from the grocery store. She saw the notebook on table in front of me and the pen in my hand and asked, "What are you doing?" "I decided to take your challenge." I don't remember last week when we were reading these stories on that internet site, I commented on how bad some of them were and said that even I could write better. You said I couldn't. Like I don't have it in me to be creative. I guess I did say that, but my comment was based on what I know about your grades when we were in high school. You always got B's and C's for your work in classes that required written reports, and you got a C for the work you had to do for business research and report writing. Well, I think I can do better now. It doesn't matter. Come on. You can help me get the groceries. I helped her get the bags and helped her put some things away, then sat back down at the table and started writing. As I was making dinner, she asked, "What's this about?" "I won't say anything. I'll let you read it when I'm done and you can critique it before I post it." I didn't think it would be too hard. Yeah, everything I did in college didn't bring in great grades, but I didn't need to at the time. I was only doing what I had to do to survive those classes. I didn't want to be there at all, but my parents more or less forced me. My dad wouldn't let me work in the family business without a bachelor's degree in business management. I'd been working there after school and summer since I was 13, and I wanted to work there when I graduated from high school, but Dad said no. Only with a degree. That's required for you to be able to work full-time, so I got over it. Got my degree and went to work in the family business. I lowered my gaze to my notepad, picked up a pen, and began. My name is Josh Barnum. I'm an airplane mechanic for a major air carrier, and I'm married to Melinda Barnum. Melinda, I call her, Melly, is an office manager for an insurance company. Melly and I have been together for a little over 11 years. 9 of them married. We met our sophomore year of college, and for me, it was love at first sight. For me, maybe, it took me 3 months to get a date with her. We clicked. On our 7th date, we made love for the first time. After that, we became a regular couple and usually made love 2 or 3 times a week, at least until the summer. I had a summer job working for my Uncle Bill, who owned a landscaping company. I worked 10 to 12 hours a day, Monday through Saturday. As a result, I was rarely able to see Melly during the week. After 3 weeks of only seeing each other on Sundays, Melly started seeing other guys. When I complained about this, she told me to get over it or lose my Sundays. It was a defining moment in our relationship. I've said before that when it came to Melly, it was love at first sight. So I gave in to not losing her altogether. At the time, I didn't realize what a mistake that was. It showed her that she could get away with a lot of things with me, and I would leave it at that. It was 3 weeks later, a Friday, and I had only worked 6 hours before calling a break due to severe thunderstorms. I called Melly to see if she would go out with me that night, and she told me she already had a date. I hung up without saying another word. I called around to see if anything was going on and found out that Mike Matson was having a party at his house. I called and found out that I was welcome, so I decided to go. Bad move on my part. I walked in just in time to see Melly hugging and then kissing Dick Moore. They then walked out onto the makeshift dance floor where Melly clung to Moore and they slow danced. Moore held her ass with both hands and pulled her tightly against him. Melly wrapped her arms around his neck, pulled his face to hers, and gave him hot lingering kiss. When the song ended, they seemed reluctant to pull away from each other. But when they finally did, Melly saw me. She said something to Dick and then headed in my direction. I turned and left the party. I'll be damned if I'm going to stick around while she makes out with someone else. The weather wasn't bad on Saturday, so I ended up switching to a 12-hour work day. I learned not to waste time calling Melly on Saturday night to set up a date for Sunday, because she would be seeing someone. I usually called her around 10 o'clock on Sunday and made arrangements for something in the afternoon-evening, but I didn't call that Sunday morning. It was one thing to know that she was dating when I was unavailable, but it was quite another to know that she was making out with her beau. It seems that the heat I noticed between her and her beau was some indication that they were probably having sex too. That put a bad thought in my head. According to what Melly had told me, that she hadn't been out with any guy for more than 4 dates. The question I was asking myself after what I'd seen from Matson, was Melly sleeping with all the guys? If she was, I could be in trouble, since we usually made love on our Sunday dates, and I had heard and believed that when you have sex with someone, you have sex with everyone that person has had sex with. I thought that maybe getting tested for sex-transmitted diseases would be a good idea, figuring that since Melly hadn't heard from me on Sunday morning, she might call me. I got the hell out of the house and was gone all day. When I got home for dinner, my mom told me that Melly had called twice and wanted me to call her when I got home. I waited until I finished dinner to call her. She got right on the case. Why didn't you call me this morning? I just thought, considering the way you were making out with that guy who replaced me. We've talked about this, Josh. I'm not staying home just because you can't make it. I know. And I got over it when I thought it was just platonic dating, but what I saw was far, far beyond platonic. I thought we had something special, Melissa, but I'm not so sure anymore. Don't say that, Josh. We do have something special. We need to talk, baby. I don't care what time you work tomorrow, but when you get off, come see me. Can you do that? I think I can. Promise? Okay. I'll be there when I get off. Monday was a 12-hour work day, so I didn't get to Melly's house until early 9 o'clock. Her mom opened the door and told me that Melly was waiting for me on the patio. Melly was on the phone with her back to the door when I got outside, and what I overheard before she closed her phone didn't bode well for our relationship. What I heard did. I loved what happened on Friday. I can't wait to see you on Tuesday. I have to go now. He'll be here soon. Bye. I went back into the house and then opened the patio door with a big noise, and she turned around and saw me coming out of the house. I didn't give any sign that I overheard anything. I just walked over to the table and sat down. I just looked at her and waited. She finally realized I wasn't going to start a conversation, so she said, "What's wrong, Josh? You agreed to me going on a date when you can't carve out the time." "Yeah. But I thought these dates were something like going to a movie and maybe a milkshake at Harry's, or maybe a party like Matson's where you dance and socialize with our friends, simple things, acting like you're still my girlfriend. That's not like anything I've seen at Matson's. The way you exchanged saliva with this guy and let him run his hands all over your body without even trying to stop him pretty much told me that if he wasn't already sleeping with you, he would soon. Not exactly how I expected my girlfriend to behave in front of my friends. Those are disgusting things you're saying to me. It is what it is. Maybe you should just leave. That's probably the best thing to do. After what I've seen and not knowing how I feel about all your dates, I think it might be a good idea to get tested." I got up and left her there with a shocked expression on my face. I made it to my car before she caught up with me. "You don't really think of me that way, do you? What I saw Friday night was pretty rough, Melly. I don't want to take any chances." I got in the car and drove off, and she stood there staring after me. I did get tested, clean, but I never called Melly and let her know. We avoided each other for a little over a week, and then on Thursday, when I was eating lunch in the student dining hall, Melly came over to my table, sat down and said, "You didn't call me on Sunday. There was no need for that. You're being unfair, Josh. Why do you expect me to stay home 6 days a week because of your job? Maybe because I look at it as training. What the hell does that mean? Maybe it's to prepare you for what you might have to do after you get married, and your husband has a job that makes him work late. That's just stupid. Being married is not the same as going to school. Maybe you see it that way, but not the way I do. You knew all along that I intended to ask you to marry me after graduation, and you led me to believe that you would say yes. You know that my major is aviation maintenance management. And when I graduate, I will have my airplane and propulsion license. My goal is to work for an airline and advance my career. There's a damn good chance that if I do get hired at an airline as a rookie, I'll have the worst shift and the worst weekends. If you can't handle my work schedule now, how are you going to handle my 3 to 11 shift with Tuesdays and Wednesdays off?" That's different. I'll work too. And we'll do what we have to do to adjust to our circumstances. That's in the future if we have one. Right now, we need to survive as a couple, and I'm not sure we can, given what I now know about your dating. We agreed to talk that night after I finished work, and eventually, she gave in and said she would only date on Fridays, Saturdays, and would always make sure the dates were with my friends. That way, I could always ask someone if she was doing anything that wouldn't pass the boyfriend test. It helped that landscaping was a seasonal job that ended in late fall. For the rest of our class and throughout graduation, I kept a close eye on her, and she only flipped out 3 times. And I pretended I didn't know anything. Why? Blame it on love. When we graduated, Melly moved in with me, and we lived together while my parents prepared the wedding. It was a new experience for both of us, to be able to make love every day and not have to rush back home. There were nights when I wasn't at all sure I would be able to get out of bed in the morning. It seemed like all Melly and I, oh, yes, and myself wanted was to make love all the time, but, of course, we couldn't. I did get along with the air, and as always, I had the worst shift for the midnight, and my days off were Wednesday, Thursday. Melly had a degree in accounting, and she got a job at an accounting firm where she worked from 8 to 5, and Saturday, Sunday were days off. During tax season, from about the end of January through 1st May, she usually worked 10 to 12 hours a day, and sometimes she had to work Saturdays. We were married 5 months after graduation, and our wedding gift from both sets of parents was a down payment on a 4-bedroom ranch in one of the best neighborhoods in town. Neither of us wanted to have children until we were established in our jobs, so Melly used one of the bedrooms as a home office. There was a fairly large patio in the back of the house, and one of our first purchases after moving in was a hot tub that was installed on one side of the patio. It didn't take long before it filled up. We had a housewarming party a month after the tub was installed, and after everyone tried out the tub, it started to feel like we had company gathering every weekend. Not that I liked that company. I had to leave at 2:45 to get to work on time. As we got to know our neighbors, we started getting invited to barbecues and picnics, and once that started happening, of course, we had to have a couple of our own. We became really good friends with the neighbors on either side of us and those who live right across the street. Things went great for the first 2 years, and we adjusted to our different schedules. And then things changed. I found out about it much later, but was pretty much what I was talking about when I talked to Melinda back in college. I was working Friday, Saturday nights, and Melinda was tired of staying home on the best date nights. At first, it was outings with the girls after work on Friday evenings she never told me about. After a couple months, she decided that since she could get away with me not finding out about her outings with the girls, she could get away with going out on Saturdays. She just needed to be home in bed by the time I got home. She started going on dates with guys she worked with and guys she met at parties. I don't know when the hell this started, so I had no idea how long it had been going on, but it was reported to me by a neighbor who lived across the street. He was having drinks with a client Friday night after dinner and saw Melinda dirty dancing with some guy and acting like a pussy. Saturday morning, when Melinda left to go shopping, he came over and told me what he had seen. It upset me, but it didn't surprise me. He told me that his brother was a cop who moonlighted as a private investigator on his days off, and his brother's days off were Friday, Saturday. His brother's rates are 25% of what a full-time private investigator would charge, so I asked him to help get his brother to contact me. All it cost me was for him to follow Melinda from Friday when she left work until she went home, and Saturday from the time I left for work until she went home cost $600, and it was worth every penny. On Friday, when Melinda got home from work, she headed straight to the bar, and no sooner had she sat down on a bar stool than a guy bought her a drink and danced with her. They left the bar at 8 and checked into Motel 6, and, yes, they left the lights on and stayed in room 107 until 11, and then she headed home. She didn't even leave the house on Saturday. At 4, Philby, her boss, stopped by, and although Spencer, the cop, couldn't film what was going on in the house. He got some pretty good footage of Melinda fornicating with him, while lying on pillows in the bathroom. On my first day off, I took everything I had to a divorce attorney, and after reviewing what I had, he suggested that I contact her boss for an alienation of affections and her company if there was anything in their company's policy and procedure manual about the relationship between supervisors and those they supervise. Her boss owns the company. And when I told him that, I could almost see the dollar signs in his eyes. I told him to go ahead and get on board. He told me to give him a week or so, and he would have the paperwork ready to sign. I left his office hoping I could act like an ignorant jackass, which I was until I got the Spencer report. I guess I succeeded because Melinda didn't seem any different around me. The lawyer called me a week later and told me he had the paperwork ready for my signature. When I got to his office, he was smiling and said he had some very good news for me. Apparently, her boss was bragging to everyone in the office about having Melinda. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure the overheard conversation is just a rumor. It's basically a case of he said / she said, maybe if it wasn't taped. The person I got the tape from hates Philby and is always looking for some way to screw things up. Isn't there some law says both parties have to be aware of the tape? Some states do, but ours is not one of them. Alright then, go ahead and do what you think is best. I finished the story, reread it, and decided it was okay. Dinner time was approaching. I called my wife from the kitchen and handed her the story and asked her to read and comment. She took the story from me and started reading it. About halfway through, she started to frown and finally, with a loud whoop, looked at me and fainted. I got up, grabbed a glass of water, and splashed it in her face. She mumbled something as I helped her up. Just then the doorbell rang, and I told her it was probably for her. She looked confused as I walked her to the door. There stood a young blonde-haired girl. The blonde stopped chewing her gum long enough to ask, "Mrs. Melinda Barnum?" Melinda said yes, and the blonde handed her an envelope with the words, "You have been served. Enjoy your evening." Melinda didn't hear the last sentence. She fainted again when she heard she'd been served. This time, I didn't bother with a glass of water. I just grabbed her leg and dragged her into the house to close the door, then went into the kitchen and got myself a beer.